So doing these daily videos for the past week has been a really interesting exploration into the idea of impermanence. I'm learning that it's really easy to see myself or my career or my platform or my credentials as a musician all as something that's very permanent and set in stone. An assumption which historically has made me horribly afraid, both of performing music live and of putting out the videos that I wanted to make, as if it would be some permanent mark on my record if the products that I was making wasn't just perfectly exactly what I thought it should be. When in fact the only thing that's guaranteed is nothing is permanent. Everything's constantly changing. Nothing illustrates that better than music itself. It's there one instant and then it's gone. So it's been kind of cool to practice making videos in a way that reflects that deeper understanding and isn't so concerned with propping up this imagined version of Marc Griset. One way that I like to think about articulation is imagining that I'm a percussionist and that I have this wide arsenal of all kinds of sticks and mallets with many different kinds of materials, levels of hardness, and textures. And I can use any one of these sticks or mallets to create a wide variety of different ictuses? What's the plural of ictus? With all these different mallets and sticks at my disposal, I have total creative control over the shape and flavor of the ictus at the front of my note. So what I'm doing today is moving through the range of my articulation, specifically from a style of articulation that's a little longer and more lugubrious towards something that's shorter and more separate, as if I was trying out a whole range of different mallets on a timpani set. Let's say that I'm preparing a difficult excerpt for an upcoming audition. For example, the opening trumpet solo for the Ravel Piano Concerto in G, which always terrifies me. But I've been noticing recently that there's this unspoken belief that's feeding this fear. The belief that I'm the only one who's afraid of and struggling with Ravel's Piano Concerto, that every other trumpet player in the world has got it all figured out and I am miles behind. Any attempt to practice or to get better, rather than coming out of a genuine love for the music, becomes another expression of this belief that I'm alone and lacking. But that belief is not in any way based in reality. Lots of people are afraid of Ravel Piano Concerto. I think everybody experiences fear and anxiety and insecurity and doubt, no matter how good you are at playing Ravel. It seems kind of obvious, actually, in retrospect, but I think just noticing that I'd been acting and thinking in a way that suggested that I was alone in feeling this fear, and then realizing that fear is not the exception, it is the norm. Suddenly, things seem a lot clearer. I don't enjoy doing the dishes. I don't own a dishwasher, so I have to do it all by hand. But it seems like there's also all sorts of wisdom traditions that have some sort of teaching about washing the dishes, right? You know, wash your bowl, do the dishes just to do the dishes and not to, like, get to the end goal. So I suppose there's something in that for being a musician, just trying to recognize the music and rhythm and tone in the most mundane things that life has to offer. And it's not like I have to go searching for that beauty. It's not like I have to listen really closely, like, It just happens to be there whether I'm looking for it or not. Like, so there's a situation I sometimes catch myself in, and it goes something like this. Either I've taken in too much air and there's no way I can spend it all by the end of the phrase, or I've taken in too little air and I don't have nearly enough to get to the end of the phrase, or I've taken a good breath but I'm just being lazy and I don't use all the fuel that I have at my disposal, or in each of these cases I am not managing or using my air very efficiently. If I were a string player, for instance, it would mean that I was only using just the middle of the bow, or only using the tip of the bow and never using the entire bow to make my sound. So I'm experimenting today with these little economics exercises, I guess you could call them, where I'm trying to spend the air that I actually take in, rather than backing up my system with too much fuel or starving it of the fuel it so desperately needs. I don't want to splurge with my air, but I also don't want to be stingy. Have you ever fallen out of love with music? It's happened to me. A couple years ago, I suddenly realized one day that I wasn't enjoying listening to music. I was listening to a lot of music, but all of it was in the interest of just getting more repertoire in my system so that I could perform it, so that I could make money, so that I could build my career. Listening to music became a means to an end, almost like a weapon that I was using against the pressure and anxiety of building a career as a musician, instead of being an activity that I could genuinely lose myself in and find wonder and beauty inside of. I mean, imagine that, listening to music for the fun of it. God, I need a haircut. There's a great book that I visit every now and then. It's the Listening Book by W.A. Mathieu. It's a lovely collection of devotionals and meditations on music, and there's one little segment I want to share. Learning about music is a matter of doing your homework. Surely it is useful to study the history of a new town, the better to enjoy your visit there, and knowing the layout of the streets does help you get around. But knowing these things is not the same as experiencing the town. Some tourists memorize the history and the points of interest and never leave the tour bus. A conscious traveler can get the feel of a new place just by being there, by sitting in the cafe with an open mind while the town comes alive. So I'm marking up some scores right now in preparation for some upcoming performances, and I thought I'd share a little bit of my process. So I've got two new scores here that I just got. We've got Beethoven 9 here, and we've got a collection of Strauss tone poems. So what I like to do is I'll get the score up. I've got the movements all dog-eared up here. This is the last movement. Come over here, grab a pencil. This is a great pencil for marking up music. This is a Mitsubishi 4B. It's got a nice soft graphite core. I come in here and I do a nice long curved bracket around the brass, my section. I'm including the timpani because there's just so much in this piece that the trumpets and the timpani have together. And then I do a smaller square bracket around the actual trumpet, so I can see there's me. And I'm doing this pretty much throughout the entire score so that I can see what is going on in the brass at any given time, what kind of stuff I should be listening to. I've got some asterisks here saying, oh, here's the main line. It's going back and forth between the violins, 1 and 2. as well as the oboe and the clarinet. Here's something where I know to really clue into the timpani here. All the winds up here have this 32nd note lining up with the timpani's last note right here. I'm just looking for all these little details where things just line up. Or with Strauss, with this page of Death and Transfiguration, which part of this should the audience be drawn to? I mean, probably not me. I'm just sitting there. It should probably be something like the trombones, right? It's helpful to actually see that I am just one character in a much wider drama taking place on stage, and to identify the points at which I am just an extra in the background setting the atmosphere, and the points at which I actually need to step forward and say something.